Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Springboard Language Learning with Mote. My name is Jennifer Scott, and I'm here to talk about what is Mote. For me, Mote is teacher feedback, but it's not only that, it's also student learning and it's language learning. So, I am part of the MEC 16 Innovator Academy, which means I did my academy in Spanish, in my second language. So I understand what it's like to have the most brilliant mind and then to stumble with those words as we are talking in our second or our third languages. So my goal is to make our students feel comfortable, to share that brilliance that's inside of them as they are learning some new vocabulary and grammar. So when we talk about Mote, we're talking about feedback. Here is a screenshot of my newest Google Classroom. And in it, you will see students are leaving me comments in Mote, and I am also giving them comments back. Because one, it's really quicker to record a voice message than type it. And then they get to hear my intent. They get to hear my purpose. And that just creates relationships with my students. Mote is also translation. I am able to go into a Mote and I am able to click this translate button and choose what language I want to read it in. So if I come into my example classroom, let me go into my student, I could listen to the Mote, but I also can click this translate and I can choose the language. So I have students who speak Arabic. They can look at it in Arabic. They can listen to me in English, but confirm what I said in their primary language. And yes, we're going to be talking about ChatGPT because I have that included. I can give directions. So we have a lot of new teachers this year that have a couple of years experience or no experience teaching. And they have students who have just arrived to the United States. And we do not speak Arabic, we do not speak Tagalog, and we do not speak Spanish, at least all of us. And how are we going to communicate with them? Well, you create a Mote and you can translate it for the student, or they can translate it for themselves. And we're going to come back to this feature in a little while because I have the greatest idea for this year and I am so excited to get it started. Students do the translated directions themselves. So when we're talking about Mote, notice that we have the free version. Now, the majority of my students are going to use the free version of Mote. My students who are level 2s, 3s, 4s, I'm the one who has the paid version. But I also have the ability to do custom, and this is the one I want to do with my 6th period class because my 6th period class are my new arrivals. They're my L1 students, the ones who have been in the United States for 3 years, or maybe they've been here longer and their language is not progressing. I am going to focus on this class using the department or team licenses. So, how might we use Mote to promote language learning? Well, let's look at the different categories. We're going to look at reading first. So in this example, this was actually 2 years ago. My students were learning history, and we were focusing on the unicorn of the Arabian Peninsula. What I wanted them to do is I wanted them to listen to me read this passage. And then when they are done, they have to read it back to me. But instead of the entire paragraph, they're only going to read to me one sentence. So I read the entire paragraph. They get to hear the vocabulary, they get to hear the pronunciation, and then they read back to me in one sentence. Now, I think it's amazing that I can record audio for my students. That is super nice. But what about the time? I don't know about you. I'm very overwhelmed with so much to do, and I'm not going to give up my entire weekend for my students, right? So here's a plan. Do you guys see how I have second, third, fourth, and fifth period for English language development? These are my students who are levels twos, threes, fours, and are ready to exit. There are about 28 students who actually are on the verge of exiting, and all we have to do is demonstrate that they have their reading and writing skills at grade level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do peer tutoring, and I'm going to have my students in my other classes record those paragraphs for my students in sixth period so that they can practice it themselves. They can hear their classmates read the paragraphs, and then they can go ahead and make their own Mote. Now, we know that we have Flip and we have Mote. And the question is, which one do I use? Do I only use Mote? Do I only use Flip? And the answer is no, you use both. I use Mote when it comes to speaking short sentences, 30 seconds, we're good. I use Mote if it's one sentence. I use Flip if it's multiple paragraphs or continued conversation. Use both depending on your purpose. Now, how can I use Mote to improve writing? In past years, I've actually demonstrated how to go to the Learning Zone, which is an excellent resource. Thank you, Mote. And using these resources like creative writing. If you go to the link, which is go.bcsd.com/9b, what you're going to see is these directions. And what I like to do is I provided a template for you. And there is a beautiful add-on by Alice Keeler called Docs to Slides. My students have used this to create books. This example right here is from a newcomer. This was a level 1. This was a level 3. They wrote an entire story. They edited it. They revised it. They practiced reading it. And then they had to record each slide using Mote. And then they got to listen to their classmates' stories. It was gorgeous. And here was one story. And unfortunately, when I went to go play the audio today, their voices were not working. But trust me, it is amazing to have them read their stories. Now, let's talk academic speaking. So here is a lesson that we did in 2022 in our history class, because I've had to teach almost everything. And I always require my students to do a private comment. You can type or you can use Mote. And I want you to tell me 3 facts about the Cherry Blossom Festival. And you know what? Students did it. So you see how this says Hannah Banana? That is actually my sample student. It is my voice. It is my example. So I can show the students, this is where I want you typing. And it was just amazing to hear the students share what they were learning. And it gives me encouragement to continue on with my instruction. Now, last year I had this student. He was absolutely amazing, and I have him back again this year. He always chose Mote when it came to sharing what he learned in our science class. And one thing that I learned from him was the importance of using sentence frames. So do you remember that example where we talked about the orcs and that's in Saudi Arabia? Well, I decided I need to have sentence frames. So what I did is I went into ChatGPT and I explained, hey, this is the information. This is my class. My students need the first grade level vocabulary. I need sentence frames. Do not provide the answers. And what it did is it actually gave me this writing. I'm like, yay, word bank. Wait a minute, Chatty. You just gave me all the answers. That's not going to help my students. So ChatGPT is never a one answer unless you are named Katie McNamara. Yeah. All right. She's actually really good at writing this. So I come back and I say, I need sentence frames. I need to copy them. And it gave me more. And I went ahead and I asked one more time, and it gave me this beautiful formatting, which I put for the students. So now the students are using Mote and they have a sentence frame. So this is my example here. Here was my prompt that I actually had to go back and have a conversation with. But I want to show you this amazing idea for our newcomers. So we know Mote has so much potential for all of our learners, but especially for our multilingual students. And there is a blog post over on Mote that says you get instant feedback and you get to practice pronouncing the words. So let me show you a lesson we did yesterday in class. Yesterday was our third day of school. I issued out Chromebooks in 6th period. I had the students log in, which means I had to give out username and passwords. And then this picture right here is Go Guardian. The reason why I gave my students the Chromebook was because no matter where they sat in the classroom, I wanted them to see my screen. So you can see that I am sharing my screen, and this student right here is actually on the website learning, and they are looking at my document camera because I believe it's really important to take handwritten notes. And so we're doing a lesson from English 3D Language Launch. And we're brainstorming ideas and we have sentence frames. How do you describe yourself? My students who've been in the United States for maybe they just arrived or in the past year, they're focusing on the first part. I describe myself as, and put an adjective. My students who've been here longer, I challenged them and I said, I want you to not only name the adjective, I want you to give more description by adding a verb. And we had a word bank, yay. We have a sentence frame, yay. At the end of that lesson that they hand wrote, this is what we're doing. In your groups, I want you to speak to your classmates. I want you to practice your sentences. So they're looking in their classmates' eyes. They're talking to them. They're shy. Oh boy, are they shy. And then their computers were already on, weren't they? They go into the private comments in Google Classroom and they record themselves.
We started school on Wednesday, and Friday, our third day of school, we had a lesson that used Mote. Let me give you some examples. Hannah Banana is my example student, meaning she's my voice in a student Google Classroom account. This is what I wanted students to do.
I describe myself as intelligent.
Listen to these multilingual students who are level 1 in English.
I describe myself as serious because I am quiet.
I describe myself as smart because my Scott make me to say it.
That one was adorable.
I describe myself as intuitive. I describe myself as smart. I describe myself as serious. I describe myself as helpful.
And one more.
I describe myself as serious.
So, could you hear those beautiful voices? That was yesterday, 6th period. The students had used Mote for the first time, except you heard one male voice. He was my student from last year, where those sentence frames really matter. Now, what is my plan for this year? We tried to do this 2 years ago, something similar. Unfortunately, in 2021, our district experienced what was called the Zoom draft. Not all of our students ended up going back to school physically here in California. So we had to pull 4 teachers from the classroom to do virtual teaching, which messed up this entire pilot. All right. So, what is the idea? The idea is the following. I have a Google Classroom. In this Google Classroom, each week on Monday, we have a math assignment. Tuesday, science. Wednesday, English language arts. Thursday, history. And Friday, PE. Now, what they're going to do is they are going to listen to me, because listening is an important skill. Let me see if I can come to my example accounts. So my students have a choice. They can read what I wrote, which a lot of students do choose, or they can listen to my voice. So the audio was simply me giving directions. And then what the students can do is, if they want to confirm what they said in their native language, most of my students will speak Spanish here in California, and they can translate it. Right here, what they're going to do is they're going to record what they learned in math class, and they're going to do it in their primary language because maybe the vocabulary is easier for them and they know this. After they do their first Mote, what happens? Are going to translate it, because that translate fit button is right here. And then they're going to read it back in English. So, primary language, because we want our students to be truly bilingual, multilingual, not just have one language take the place of the other. And then in English, so that they're learning this vocabulary. Now, the part that I like the best is this. Not only are they practicing, but I'm adding their math teacher, their science teacher, their English language arts, their history teacher, their PE teacher, so that they can have conversations. Because oftentimes our teachers feel very inadequate. They feel like, how do I know I'm reaching my student? Now they get to hear their student's voice in their primary language and in English. And that just makes it all, just think of the relationship building and the academic building that we are doing.